Okay, well, are you ready? Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to, my name is Alan Williams. I'm the board chair of MCC. And before we call the meeting to order, I would like to introduce one new trustee today. We actually have two, one of whom is present today, Connie Walker. Connie, would you like to say hello?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you, Trustee Williams. My name is Connie Walker. I'm an attorney. I'm a retired career law clerk for a judge in the Western District of New York. And have been a practitioner for over 30 years in this community. And I am really overjoyed to join the board.
Yes. Thank you, Connie. And I'd like to say thank you for your patience. Your name was submitted and your background check was actually done about at least, 3 years ago? And, when Cuomo was the governor, and finally the current governor, Governor Hochul, finalized your appointment. So thank you for your patience and for hanging in there.
And I'm appreciative of that.
And welcome to the January meeting of the Board of Trustees of Monroe Community College. Can we have a roll call, please? Linda, would you do?
Trustee Barlow?
Present.
Trustee DeLoss?
Here.
Trustee Levenheim?
Present.
Trustee Colombo?
Here.
Trustee Rakoff?
Present.
Trustee Tillinghast?
Here.
Trustee Walker?
Present.
Chair Williams?
Here. The meeting has been called to order and a quorum has been established. I would now like for Bonadito to give their presentation.
Thank you very much. Linda, thank you very much for converting that over. We are here to present the results of the audit. Before I get into the details, I want to go back to a point that I made during the planning and scope meeting, that your college, and including your accounting and finance department, has been in a whirlwind of activity, whether it's what is occurring in the enrollment or the daily, the vaccines or exposure on terms of operations. And those whirlwinds can often be distracting. But what I'm very pleased to report is that the college and the accounting and finance team were very well prepared for the audit. One of the things we did this year was we actually moved it back 2 weeks to allow the accounting department more time to prepare for the audit. And during the period of audit, they were well prepared. They were focused on the audit, and we were able to come in late November and early December and crank out the audit and do it in an effective and efficient manner. So Linda, if you can scroll down to a couple of pages to where the executive summary is. Thank you very much. We plan to issue an unmodified opinion on the 2021 financial statements. An unmodified opinion means it is a clean audit opinion. In performing our audit, we did not identify any material weaknesses in internal control, and there were no audit adjustments identified as part of our audit procedures. So what that means is the information being provided to you on a monthly and real-time basis can be relied upon. The accounting policies and estimates, those were consistent with the previous year, and we deem them to be reasonable in relation to the financial statements as a whole. And the audit of federal funds. This year, the college received $66.5 million in federal funds, $34 million in student financial aid, and $26.2 million of higher education emergency relief funds, or HERF. So if you can imagine, on a budget of about $100 million, your reliance on the federal funds is pretty significant. And I'm very pleased to report that we did not have any findings identified during our audit of the federal funds. We go to the next page. Obviously here, there's a lot of words. And if you're looking at the same screen, it's a little bit smaller. But what we're attempting to do here is to kind of circle back on some of the key risk areas I mentioned during the planning and scope meeting. So we looked at revenue recognition, tuition revenues and government appropriations, and are those collectibles? The assumptions that underlie the actual assumptions related to your OPEB and your cost sharing pension plans that we'll discuss in a bit. The control environment can become decentralized during the pandemic, and then also the increased complexities. The takeaway from this is we were able to perform these procedures. We did not have any additional findings. We deem all your estimates and valuations to be reasonable in relation to the financial statements in whole. And again, reiterating that even with the increased scope of the federal awards, we did not identify any compliance findings. So with that, I'll turn it over to Andy to take you through the financial numbers.
Thanks, John, and good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. If you could scroll down to the next slide, please. Thank you. So here we have MCC's condensed 2-year balance sheet or statement of net position. And it's a little bit different from the version that you see during the year because this version is on the full GASB accrual basis of accounting. So just to point out some of those key differences as well as some high-level trends. If you look at the first line, you have MCC's current assets, which is primarily your cash on hand and your accounts receivable. And that had a balance of $75 million at the end of fiscal 21, which is about $21 million higher than the balance 1 year prior. And that's largely due to the higher ed emergency relief or HERF funds that MCC was awarded. I would also highlight here MCC's current ratio, which is measured as your current assets divided by current liabilities. And that's a metric that illustrates the ability to pay liabilities that are coming due in the next year with the assets that you have available to pay them. So at August 31st, 21, the current ratio was 4.5 compared to 2.3 the year before. So almost double that over the year. And this trend is consistent with what we're seeing at other community colleges, and we largely attribute that again to the influx of HERF dollars. So the two big differences here that you don't see during the year are the effects of MCC's pension obligations and the other post-employment benefit or OPEB obligations. And I'll talk about those more in the coming slides, but for now I would just point out the net pension asset about 4 or 5 lines down of 9.4 million. And that represents the New York State Teachers Retirement System's overfunded position. And then down below in non-current liabilities, you have the 0.1 million pension liability, which represents MCC's share of the New York State Employees Retirement System. And that's slightly underfunded, which is why it's in that small liability position. And then for OPEB, you can see just 1 line down, there's a $232 million liability. And so again, just for now, pointing those out and where they fall in the statement of net position. And then in the coming slides, we'll explain those a bit more. And then at the very bottom of this statement, on the last line, you can see the total net position of 17.6 million. And that includes $182 million of capital assets, most of which are held by Monroe County in trust on behalf of MCC. And so those get added here to report on the full accrual basis of accounting. And then the unrestricted net position, which is the second to last line down, you see 171 million of a net deficit. And that's largely because of the OPEB liability I just mentioned. And if you move to the next slide, we can dig into the net position a little bit more. So this graphic here is meant to reconcile the fund balance that I just showed you to what you and Suny see throughout the year. So at the top, you start off with your $12.1 million fund balance at the beginning of fiscal 21. Then you have 110 million of unrestricted operating revenues, 102 million of unrestricted operating expenses, resulting in current year additions to fund balance of 8.3 million. And that significant increase to fund balance is largely the the result of utilizing those HERF awards to fund your operating expenses that you had budgeted at the beginning of the year. Then in the middle of this page, you see the 16.7 million of HERF, which represents additional HERF related to lost revenues. And that gets you to the 37 million of unrestricted fund balance that you and Suny see during the year. So then the last few lines on this graphic, you have the impact of GASB 75, and that relates to accounting for the OPEB obligations. Then impact of GASB 68, which relates to the accounting adjustments for MCC's pension obligations. And again, I'll talk about both of those on the next couple slides. And then just on the last line, you see the $171 million deficit, which is what you saw on the previous page and what you would see on MCC's audited financial statements. So next slide, please. So to dig into the OPEB liability a bit more, so you have this $232 million liability, and that represents amounts that MCC's employees have earned and that MCC will ultimately have to pay out related to health insurance benefits for its retirees. And this is done on a pay-as-you-go basis as the obligations come due each year. And New York State currently does not allow for the creation of a separate trust for these types of plans. So unlike the pension plans, there's no underfunded or overfunded status of this plan. However, MCC has designated about $16 million of its net assets internal. It's an internal designation. And that's just set aside to meet these obligations in the future when they're due. It's also important to understand that the large $230 million liability that you see on the balance sheet gets adjusted for certain actuarial assumptions. So present value discount, healthcare trend rates, mortality rates, things of that nature. And we do review those as part of the audit and we determine them to be reasonable. Next slide, please. So on here, we look at MCC's pension obligations, and that's related to its participation in the New York State Employees Retirement System and the New York State Teachers Retirement System. So in the first table down below, in the left-hand column for 2021, you can see that the TRS plan flipped from a $1.7 million liability last year to a $9.4 million asset in the current year. And trending in a similar direction, the employees retirement system went from a $26 million liability last year to almost a break-even position at August 31st, 2021. Then on the next slide, we talk a little bit more about these two plans. So for both of them, they're administered at the state level and they get allocated to each of the participating employers. So MCC is one of many, many employers across the state that participates in the plans. So the assets and liabilities that you see on MCC's balance sheet represents MCC's proportionate share of the total plan asset or liability. So that's what this slide is illustrating. So in the left-hand column, that shows the total plan net position, followed by the liability for the plan, and to get to either an underfunded or overfunded status. And then on the right, in the right-hand column, those small percentages are MCC's proportionate share. So by multiplying that percentage times the total plan's net position, you get to the amounts that you ultimately see on MCC's balance sheet. And just as a final note about these plans, I think it's important to understand and point out that these New York State plans are generally fully funded. And if you were to look at similar plans in other states, in many cases, you'd find that they're not nearly as funded, which results in much higher liabilities for each of those plan participants. So the fact that TRS is overfunded and ERS is right around break even is definitely not something to just take for granted. So at this point, I will pass it back to John to pick up on the next slide.
All right. Thank you very much. So a few themes we're going to see over the next few slides is essentially increasing in the fund balance, and as you probably picked up on the theme, is that relates to the HERF funding. So when we look at this first slide right here in the top half, that is your unrestricted fund balance as a percentage of total operating expenses. In the Suny Comptroller's Office has traditionally issued guidance that says you want to be between 5 and 15%. So that's those bottom numbers that you see under the years. So the preceding 4 years up until 2021, so 2017 through 2020, MCC's fund balance as a percent of operating expenses was between the 5 and 15%. This year it increased to 36.3%, and that's because of the inclusion of the HERF funds that were used to offset expenditures as well as lost revenues. And then the chart right below it, what that shows is what has been your net operating revenues versus net operating expenses. And you can predominantly see that the blue line and the red line were fairly close over between 2017 and 2020. And that shows that again, combined with where you keep your percentage of fund balance, that the college has been good fiscal stewards of the funds available to them. As Andy mentioned a little bit earlier, as you can see in 2021, you have that gap now of $110 million of operating revenues versus $102 million of operating expenses. A couple of things related to that, how the gap occurred. One is when you did the budget process, you were, at that time, it was not determined what types of eligible expenditures could be used for HERF. So the college budgeted for those expenditures, but not the revenue side. The HERF guidelines came out, and then they were able to utilize those expenditures and recognize the revenue related to HERF. The other item was the uncertainty last year during the budgeting process of the state revenue and what would be potential state operating cuts. Those cuts did not come to fruition, so also increased state operating aid, and that's what created the gap this year. If we go to the next slide, what this shows is the composition of the revenue source. So of your three main pillars of revenue: student share, which is your tuition and fees, the state share through operating aid, and then the local share, which is the county operating assistance, chargebacks, as well as other local sources. The right side of the columns show the average, what the average community college is and what the Suny formula is. And what we're presenting is that the student share through their tuition and fees are covering approximately 50% of the operating costs of the college. You will also see that the percentage of the local share did decrease between years. This is due to in 2021, the college added to their fund balance. So that actually decreases the local share. While in 2020, the college had to utilize fund balance. So that increases the local share. But between both years, it's important to note that Monroe County is the local sponsor, did contribute $19.1 million in operating assistance. We go to the next slide and we look at some benchmarking onto your peers. These are upstate New York community colleges along the thruway. And what we're looking at here is the net operating cost per FTE. You can see that in this chart, MCC is in the middle of the pack for 2020 in terms of their operating cost per FTE. A couple of things though, obviously it's not always just what's your expenses and how you manage those. Institutions often have a variety of different needs to meet the needs of their students and meet the needs of the community. One thing that that's been identified is that Monroe County operates what's called multi-campuses, or obviously, as you know, you have two campuses. So what we've done here is we've asterisked the colleges that are operating with multiple campuses. So you can kind of just give you another data point to inform you on what the cost structure of the college looks like to its peers. And we'll go to the next slide, which provides a benchmark with the same peer groups on where you are with your percentage, where you are with your fund balance as a percentage of operating expenses. So the takeaway here is one could say, well, MCC looks like they're in the lower part. But I would come back and say you operated within the 5 to 15%, and the other schools could have different needs driving their decisions to increase their fund balances. Do focus on the top, because MCC, with the use of the HERF funds, is now at 36.3%. And I personally audit 2 other schools, and I've been able to see visibility into the other colleges that are firm audits as well. And I can tell you those fund balances are going up this year because of HERF. And then we go on to the next slide. So this is just a graphic representation of where you are to the median of the peer groups that we went against, that we showed you in the previous slide. And then the next slide discusses student financial aid. So again, I highlighted earlier that MCC received $66.5 million in federal awards. 34 million of that was federal student financial aid, and another 5.5 million of that was actually her funds that were distributed to the students. So total amount of financial assistance distributed to students was $40 million. So the below just kind of shows a representation of how reliant the students are on federal financial aid. So this year it comprised 93% of gross tuition, and the average student, or the per FTE, got $4,800 of student financial aid. So again, it shows the importance of staying in compliance with these extremely complex programs. Then the next slide discusses your information technology environment. And this is something we discussed also at the planning and scope meeting, that we do look into here. We perform inquiry over it to make sure that there's not something, that there's not an issue that could actually impact the financial statement audit. And what we show is this chart at the bottom in terms of desirable and functioning, moderate risk, or consider immediate action. I am very pleased to report that all of these X's are on the left-hand column. Over the years, you've worked to move them from right to left and get them into this column. I'll also add that Eileen is a leader amongst her peer groups. I can hear them when I'm at my other community colleges or discuss who should we contact. And I say, I would contact Eileen. She's doing this. Or they actually came back to me and said they contact her. But I always say, knock on wood, because with cybersecurity, it's not if you'll be breached, it's when you'll be breached. But what these X's represent is that you're thinking about it, you're proactive, and if something were to happen, you would have a formalized strategy on how to respond. And then the remainder of this presentation is ancillary items that you can read at your leisure. Obviously, if it's important to read, but if there was something worth breaking out, actually, Linda, you can keep continuing to scroll down. There's something more to discuss specifically. We would have mentioned that earlier. So with that, we'll turn it over for questions.
I have one question. If you go back to page 8, it has to do with the ERS, TRS, where for this year, yeah, there's the 1.3 and the 1.8. So the state doesn't send any money back to us, but do we take it as a credit for 22 or what?
Alan, I'll try to avoid going into a deep, dark accounting hole, but no, they do not send money back to you. What you're seeing there is the 1.3 and the 1.8 is what we call like on the accrual basis, or this is your paper way of calculating revenue. As Andy mentioned, this is pay as you go. So what really occurred this year, especially on the ERS side, was the reason it went from such a liability to actually break even, or what I would call break even, was investment performance. ERS last year was measured at 331.20, which was probably one of the lower points in the market. And obviously it's since gone back up then. But behind the scenes, what ERS and TRS does is they calculate your pay as you go based on market performance, based on actual assumptions such as mortality, what you're paying out in benefits, et cetera, et cetera. There's typically a little bit of a lag with that. Probably, I believe it's maybe about 2 years. So if you have a good market performance in 2 years down the road, you're not necessarily going to get a credit, but you might see a lower payment. Same thing if you have a period of poor historical market performance, you might start to see your payment actually go up. So again, no credit to it, but it does actually impact the pay as you go amount.
Okay.
Alan, if I can continue on that line, Jonathan and Andy, I always look forward to your MDA. So I was curious if we were to capture I guess what would be the total periodic pension cost for the TRS, ERS, and OPEB, we would then follow the projected deferred outflows if we wanted to capture the effects of their respective balances and performance relative to what was expected, knowing that gets adjusted on a trailing basis actuarially, but to know the actual liability that's accrued on a periodic basis or annual basis, would we look to the deferred outflows as the baseline for that?
No, I would rely, and I know it's always subject to actual swings, but I would rely on what the actual liabilities are that are reported on the balance sheet. With the deferred inflows and outflows, and this gets a little bit confusing, but what those are attempting to do is smooth out some of those changes, those actual assumptions over 5 years. As an example, so even we look at the ERS right in front of me for 26 million. If you didn't have deferred inflows and outflows, that swing would have been probably 60 million. So what the deferred inflows and outflows do is they smooth it out. Maybe I think what you're saying is if I wanted to determine what the net position was because of all the liabilities related to TRS, ERS, and the OPEB and the deferred inflows and outflows, that would actually be up on the next. If you go to slide 7, actually slide 6, you can see that. If go up one more right there. So Dale, I think this might be what you're looking at. The impact of GASB 75 is a deficit of 203 million, and the impact of GASB 68 is the 5 million. Is that what you're looking at or you're considering?
Well, so I mean, that's the discounted present value of that future liability. But if we were to amortize that or accrete it rather over time each year,
Okay.
not only the difference, but if you include the service credits, we know what we get billed, but what we get billed is not always representative of what we should be getting billed.
Oh, I apologize. Okay, you're saying how can we actually figure out what the accrued expense is every year, or what versus what the cash flow is every year?
Correct.
Okay. Let me review the actuarial report, see if I can pull that out.
Okay.
If not, I can work with Mike Quinn, and we can also work with the actuary to try to really see what is the actual actual expenses that you'll incur versus what they're saying is a cash flow.
No, I appreciate it. It's just the ERS is a good case study of last year to this year, the extreme swing, primarily due to investment performance. The other question I had briefly is you outlined 3 economic factors that would affect the long-term sustainability of the college in the MDA. And I don't know if you have a baseline to go back to 2009 and 10. Congress passed legislation to support higher education. And there was a bit of a dynamic, both in terms of federal support and then in terms of New York State support that you might be able to draw on, if not the past is prologue, but with the existence of the HERF funds, what should we be prudently preparing for in terms of any potential changes in support, given our dependency on it?
That is a great question, Dale. What I would say is the New York State proposed executive budget that Governor Hochul put out called for $216 billion of spending. I said, my thought was last year at 205, that was no longer sustainable without federal support. This year, we're coming in at 216 billion. There has been increased revenues into the New York State, in terms of tax dollars. But sometimes I still scratch my head and say, how is that number 216? Does this make sense to me? What that says to me is, even though right now the New York State does have the cash and can support the 216, I would be nervous come 3 to 5 years, are there going to be cuts to state operating aid? But I will say in this year's budget, if you're to read the budget book or even the smaller part, there is funding for community colleges in there. One of the unique ones that stood out was funding for the becoming TAP eligible for the workforce type programs. And also, it did not appear that as of right now in the executive budget, there would be cuts to the state aid. So right now, it's kind of everything is good. New York State is receiving federal funds. You're receiving federal funds. Let's all continue to knock on wood. But let's not go back to where we were 3-5 years ago, saying the New York State budget's unsustainable. They're going to continue to cut operating aid in some fashion, and your enrollment is going down. On the federal side, right now, I think everybody knows this, but on the federal side, what can get through and what can't get through. We're in a at least a good position that the president's wife is is an instructor or faculty at a community college. So I believe there is funding there available. It's just a matter of, are these going to get through? And I think there's always going to be support for community colleges. It's just a matter of how can they get through? How does it work? And does it get to the right spot?
Perfect. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions? If not, I want to thank you, Jonathan and Andy, for the presentation, as well as I want to thank both Darryl Giacomore and Mike Quinn, along with President Bert Nana, for the good work in managing the finances in this very, very difficult times. Good job to all of you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. And also hats off to Eileen for keeping our IT systems very secure. We appreciate that.
And Eileen, yes. We'll now move to adopt the consent agenda. And unless objections are raised, the following items are proposed to be adopted and approved by consent. Some of these items address issues which have been discussed by the board in the past and are routine operational matters which do not involve new policy decisions. Other consent items are derived from provisions in existing prior approved labor contracts, capital construction programs, or other trustee initiatives. The consent agenda is presented for adoption as a single agenda item. Specific items may be removed by request of any board member for discussion as part of the regular agenda. The remaining items should then be adopted as a single agenda. Board approval of the consent agenda is required. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of Monroe Community College adopt the consent agenda effective January 31st, 2022. Trustees, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So move.
It's moved. Can I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? It requires a roll call vote. Trustee Barlow,
Yes.
Trustee DeLoss, Trustee DeLoss, you're still on mute.
He's raising his hand to indicate yes.
Okay. Trustee Lowenheim,
Aye.
Trustee Palumbo,
Aye.
Trustee Rakoff,
Aye.
Trustee Tillinghast,
Aye.
Trustee Walker,
Aye.
and Alan Williams. Any abstentions or objections? Hearing none, the motion is passed. Trustee Dale Rakoff will now give the Finance and Facilities Committee report. The board will consider these resolutions as committee of the whole, voting on each in turn. Trustee Rakoff.
Thank you, Chair Williams. And we'll discuss some of the resolutions, but first I wanted to offer for Darryl, if you would, share with us the most recent financial reports.
Yes, Trustee Rakoff, thank you. And President Bert Nana, trustees and colleagues, have for you the financial and operational highlights for this board meeting. Next slide, please. I will speak to you today about the December year-to-date financial results. In your packets, you have both the November and December financial statements, but I will focus on December. Next slide, please. My discussion today really, the trends are comparable to what I would have delivered to you in December. The numbers are updated to reflect the results through December. After I speak on the financial results, I do have some information that may be of interest to you on institutional HERF funds. And as well, I'll make a few comments on some operational aspects of administrative services. So for December, again, this is census enrollment. Through fall, we're at 3,058 FTEs. It's a decrease of 527 or nearly 15% year over year. As a result, student tuition is off 2.6 million from last year, 12.8% decline. Total revenues, however, bolstered by HERF funds of $3 million, reflect an increase of 4.2%, and expenses are managed to show a decrease year over year of 1.3 million or nearly 4%. Revenues and expenses and the changes in those items lead to a fund balance increase of 3.1 million. Next slide, please. So key performance data through December, student headcount is off about 12% year over year. Again, this is results through December 20 versus December 21. So that's 4 months ended of the fiscal year. Your FTEs, as I indicated, are off 527 FTE. If you were to take a look at the relationship between headcount and enrollment, the enrollment in the headcount relationship to FTE in 21, you need more headcount in 21 than you did in 20 to get an FTE. And this again reflects kind of the COVID era factor that students are taking fewer credits as they're trying to manage their lives at this time. Tuition is off $2.6 million or 13%. Again, enrollment driven. Your revenues, 1.8 increase. Again, HERF supported. Your expenses are down and your fund balance is up. Next slide, please. So again, this is we're at 96% of the budget through the fall census, and your full-time aidable enrollment is off about 16%, and your part-time enrollment is off 12.5%. Let me make a comment here that I believe at the December meeting, I had mentioned that I thought that dual enrollment, that we may have under budgeted dual enrollment a bit, and dual enrollment, as you may know, has really sustained itself during COVID. And as a matter of fact, early indications are that in fact, we will meet budget for the fall term when the final numbers are in. That's great news. That says a whole lot about the work we've done in getting our projections in line. Nonetheless, your tuition line will still be down because dual enrollment doesn't generate the tuition that a regular student generates. But again, the good news is we may be coming to the bottom, to be able to set a floor for going forward, and our projections are lining up. We'll just need to tweak the buckets a little bit going forward. So that's positive news. And we'll have those numbers for you at the next board meeting. Next slide, please. So your revenue year over year up $1.8 million. Again, tuition is off. Your state aid is up $1.7 million or 22%. Remember, this year we have a 98% funding floor. But the other contributor to this increase is the fact that, and as John from Bonadeo indicated, in the prior year, we had expected a 20% cut in state aid at this time. And so we had been building that into the numbers. That's what we expected to have. It did not happen. Those numbers will balance out, I believe, in the May, June timeframe once the state finally sorted it out. So at this point, we're up $1.7 million. Your sponsor rate is up $200,000 or 2.6%. Remember, we have an approved addition to aid and support from the county of $500,000 for the year. Your increase in the federal appropriation is $2.5 million. That's your HERF funds. And your all other line is a combination of things, basically other student fees, your OSP, other sponsored programs, overhead, and so on. It nets down to flat, basically year over year. Next slide, please. On the expense side, we have a favorable variance of 1.3 million, and this is generated from your salaries and benefits. Again, on the salary side, we're seeing lower adjunct faculty cost and overload costs as enrollment has dampened a bit. And offsetting that, we had the lump sum payments under the Faculty Association contract. And then really the large driver here again is vacancy and management of positions of about $500,000, about $1 million. And then related to that, because salaries are down, benefits are also down, primarily in Social Security, FICA payments, paid time off, and so on. What you are seeing here is that your retiree health costs are up year over year, not unexpected given what the trend lines have been and how positions have moved from active to retiree status over the last couple of years. Your equipment and contractual expenses are basically flat year over year. Some of that may be due to timing. We are seeing some pressure on utility costs. We're up about $400,000 this year. Remember, we're now face-to-face this year. So that's some pressure, some volume pressure. At the same time, rates are also up, but we continue to monitor that. So expenses are positive, $1.3 million. Next slide, please. Your fund balance at the end of December was at 48.6 million. That reflects a year-over-year increase of 28 million. This follows our typical liquidity cycle. We have a high point in December, and it will fluctuate over the coming months. Once the summer hits, we'll start and revenue drops off in the summer, then we will expend more fund balance. But we'll have more to say about where we think we're going to end up at the next meeting. Next slide, please. And at the same time, we do believe that wages and benefits will remain favorable for the year. Right now, wages are down 4.4, benefits at 3.5. I do expect that wages will drive an under budget position on expenses this year. Benefits will be largely on budget and probably reflect more than $1 million increase over the prior year, given retiree health insurance and the fact that the active health insurance costs increased 18% in January. So that'll be continuing pressure. We will see some positive variance in contractual expenses, I expect, for the year. Again, the college continues to support strong expense management, and we continue to focus on positions. Next slide, please. So I want to give you, it's kind of it's a mixed perspective, but it's I think a complete perspective as much as you can do in a couple of slides. Talking about MCC's financial strength. A few years ago, the NACUBO, National Association of College and University Business Officers, working with, I think, KPMG at the time, put together a series of metrics to evaluate higher education institutions. One of those metrics is a composite financial index. It's a combination of a few metrics that are then weighted. Suny uses this to evaluate its campuses. And so for 2019, so this is pre-COVID, MCC was at 3.0. That's the highest score you can get in the composite financial index. The Suny average was 1.8. MCC's rank at that time, number 1. So Suny schools ranged at that time from 0.7 to 3. So great news. Number 1, pre-COVID, as John indicated from Bonadeo, you have HERF funds that are probably strengthening the financial position of all institutions. but MCC certainly was starting out at the top. The caveat I'd make here is these metrics do not include the long-term pension liabilities and the long-term retiree health liabilities. Those non-cash liabilities are deliberately taken out of the calculation. So all of the I believe there's only one SUNY community college that does not offer some form of retiree health insurance. So we're all kind of in the same boat, yet that's a weakness of this metric. At the same time, MCC is in good standing. Cash and investments at December 31, 71.4 million, 54 and a half, 55 million approximately in cash, and as indicated, internal board designated funds for OPEB of $16.5 million. Fund balance at August 31 last year, 37 million. That's about 34% of the operating budget. Without HERF, we'd still be at around 20 million and 18%. And as you heard, SUNY recommends 5 to 15%. So again, a good financial picture, albeit with the two significant liabilities not part of that perspective. Next slide, please. So the other, I've presented this at the last meeting. This looks at the structural focus. This is looking at revenues per FTE and cost per FTE 2017-18 through an estimate for 21-22. You can see that the budget this year showed a deficit, a net revenue cost, in this case, a cost per FTE structurally of an $809 deficit. In fact, what we're now projecting, and it's early, is an $88 surplus per FTE. Now, these numbers will be updated as we move forward. And again, the cost per FTE is being driven by vacancy dollars, basically continuing to yield the actions that we took in the last couple of years in terms of positions and managing cost. HERF supported funds, once you bring HERF in, we will see revenues per FTE grow to over $15,000. The cost will be the same, and we'll be in a net position of $900 plus per FTE. So again, taking it together, good financial position where we are. We have work to do long-term to address the structural issues as the HERF support will not be there long-term. Next slide, please. So I wanted to give you a quick snapshot of HERF funds, and this focuses only on the institutional funds that we have received. And through HERF 1, 2, and 3, we received a total of $39.7 million. We have drawn down and used in these categories $18.1 million we've recorded as lost revenues. Social distancing, these costs include things like reducing class sections and increasing therefore faculty costs or instructional costs because we have smaller class sizes. There's some food service costs in here to support students who needed to quarantine when they returned to campus and so on, and purchase of equipment and software to enable distance learning. Campus safety and operations, this is all the costs related to reducing the risk of COVID-19 on campus. That's PP&E, testing materials, related labor costs for our testing center, transportation, cleaning supplies, and the like. The student support number, this was support in lieu of furloughing staff early on when no one could come to campus. We were bringing in, particularly our facilities, custodians and other facilities folks to come in on a rotating every other week basis so we could keep all staff engaged. And of course, now everyone is back. Overhead recovery allowable under the HERF funds, $900,000, and then some other items of about $200,000. So the total usage at 24.6. The remaining amount is $15.1 million. That's entirely HERF 3 funds that remains. Next slide, please. So key impacts of the HERF funds are budget support through the federal appropriations and overhead through fiscal years 21 through 23. Once we do expect to have significant support from HERF as we build the 23 budget, which is we're undertaking now. For the 24 budget, it's a different story. On the technology side, we've invested in classroom and public spaces to enable hybrid and remote operations. Computer deployment. We have not funded directly our computer deployment plan over the last 2 or 3 years. We're able to offset some of those costs going forward by the purchase of laptops, and we're studying that program. So again, we're trying to focus on items that will offset future operating costs. And we'll have more to say about that at the next meeting as we continue to drill into these numbers. HVAC upgrades. This is a possibility. We need to get approval from the federal government on this, but it is possible to upgrade our energy management system and what's the word I'm looking for? Energy management system and filtering and air handling system and so on. This has been an item that has needed to be looked at. It may well be appropriate under HERF, and the state there's a pretty good bet we can get a state match and use the HERF funds as the local share match 50% and go to the state and get the other 50% covered from the state match. So this would be good news impacting both capital and operating relief going forward. From institutional funds, we did also, as you recall, pay down some student debt. In fiscal 21, 1,490 students received aid. And in fall 21, there were 264 registrations, or 17% of those students registered in fall 21. Spring 22, 164 of those students have registered again, or 11%. And if you look at the retention of that cohort from fall to spring, it's about 62%. So this is in keeping with the federal requirement to support students and retention and persistence versus recruitment efforts. So we're quite pleased about those results. We will invest in mental health initiatives over the coming months. Suny is mandating a focus here. We're targeting $500,000, $500,000, and we're developing a program to do that. Next slide, please. And then finally, some operational highlights. Beginning January 21st, we have a New York State community testing site open to provide testing to the community. And this will be for an initial 60-day term. There is the possibility that our own MCC testing facility could draw down resources and shift them over to this community testing. Right now, we're evaluating how that might work. On January 20th, and again on February 10th, we opened a Monroe County vaccination booster site. This is primarily for MCC faculty, staff, and students. And at the January 20 site, we had 85% MCC and about 15% from the public were able to take advantage of this site. These are both on the Brighton campus. Frontier Field parking relating to the downtown campus. The agreement with the county to provide parking for the Red Wings began in 2017. It expired this past year after last season. And I've been in conversation with the county and working together, we're going to get some additional relief and a revenue sharing arrangement. As you can imagine, with COVID, total revenues have dropped off. We're hoping for an increase, but with an increase and also additional revenue sharing, we will be moving forward with the county and continuing that partnership. That's my report.
Daryl, are you sure you didn't leave anything out?
Wanted to be comprehensive for you.
No. I greatly appreciate you, Mike, and the team giving us a very thorough snapshot across really a lot of different topics that have come up over the course of the year. So I appreciate that. Any questions of the board for Daryl?
I have a couple, if you would. Daryl, back on page, I think it's page 10, either 10 or 11, where you did the calculation for the page, the next page, if you would. The cost per FTE. Now,
Yes.
does that include the annual payments to the long-term pension liability or the long-term healthcare liability?
It includes pension costs and pay-as-you-go for OPEB. So it would not include an accrual-based figure. This is as we run the operating budget on a cash basis.
Okay, all right. And then just one final question on page 13, where you talked about the student debt relief.
Yes.
On that one, that was just a one-time effort or initiative, correct?
Yes, and I'm glad you asked that question, because what I failed to mention, again, this is institutional funds. There have been other student support efforts coming out of the student pool of funds that have been awarded to the college. And that totaled $31.5 million in total to the college. And there have been, I believe, 4 distributions of funds under, they're called emergency grants. Now, we will be providing you some information at the next meeting to show you how those funds have really supported persistence among the cohorts that have received that funding. We have some pretty good data on that we're still analyzing.
Okay, and that's sort of the student debt relief program. It was something that was developed at MCC. It wasn't something that was mandated by the federal government, was it?
I believe there was an intent by the federal government to help with that. If it wasn't the federal government, it was Suny recommending that we do that. I can clarify that for you.
Daryl?
Yes.
Just an additional comment pertaining to that. So just for the sake of clarity, these were debts that the students owed to MCC, not the removal of federal financial aid debt. I think that's a very important point to clarify. These were outstanding debts that the student owed to college. And there are practices that nationally have been put in place, of which many institutions have considered doing exactly what we did. We were not mandated to do this. We recognized that it would have been a benefit and is a benefit to our students. So we took those actions. Does that help, Chair Williams?
Yes, it does, because what this did or does, well, if a student owes or is behind in their loan payments to MCC, they are not allowed to register, correct? In this?
Yes.
There's a threshold that after which a student then is precluded from registering the subsequent semester or term. But again, we cannot use it under the federal guidelines to incentivize that. We can hope that in many ways it will remove those barriers and they will make those choices. And our students have demonstrated that many of them did just that.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Could I just
And-
follow on that, just to clarify, these were MCC funds or MCC sourced funds for
These-
debt relief?
This was money from the federal government
Ah.
in the form of HERF funds that we used to support students who owed the college debt.
Understood, but that money came to the college and not directly to students.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. And Controller Mike Quinn has sent me a little in the chat here that it wasn't mandated, but the federal government supported the student debt relief, actually more than Suny did.
And Trustee Walker, those incentives, there were two different, and Mike and Daryl, I'm queuing you up here to rescue me so I don't do, it's dangerous when the president tries to talk about things to the extent that these finance folks, that's why they're my partners here. But there were different distributions under the federal guidelines, CARES Act funds and HERF funds. Okay, take it away, my colleagues, and I see Trustee Barlow's waiting to chime in as well.
So for the institutional funds, we received 5 million in HERF 1, that's CARES, and in what they call CRSA funds, and I can't tell you what the acronym is, but it's CRRSAA, that's 16.2 million. And the American Recovery Plan, ARP, is HERF 3, and that was 18.5 million.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a question. This is Trustee Barlow. On the slide where you showed where HERF 3, that there was a 15.1 million remaining of HERF funds.
Yes.
Could those HERF funds be allocated to support like certain programs within MCC? Say, if I put an example out there, we'll use the dental hygiene program. They have to use all this PPE and gowns and stuff like that. What is the possibility that some of those HERF funds could go to instruments that could be used within the clinical setting at MCC to help eliminate or to help a student make sure that their unit that they're using is sanitized?
Yeah, so the HERF funds the use of the HERF funds are prescribed by the federal government. But to your point, particularly in dental hygiene, we have supported the program through PPE and so on. As a matter of fact, we just approved an expenditure for some equipment over there that would allow for clinical work without having to have people involved. In other words, they're prototypes of some kind. I wish I could give you more particulars off the top of my head, but suffice it to say that we are supporting within the guidelines of the federal program, and dental hygiene is certainly one of those areas.
Okay, thank you.
I have a couple of questions, if I may. And Daryl, I don't know if you're the person to answer.
They're kind of finance related, but the first question I have is, I noticed in the newsletter that we got in the board packet, there was a nice little article about online classes. How do those figure in to your presentations, Daryl, when you talk about FTEs and cost? So that's the first question. The second question is, one of your other slides, I think it was 10, talked about the measurement that Suny has, and MCC scores really high on that,
Yes.
the financial. I'm just wondering if anyone knows if Suny also has something similar for, to measure, let's say, student success.
Right.
I don't know. I'd have to engage one of my colleagues to speak to that. I don't know what they might have for student success. In terms of online classes, you talked about the cost, FTE cost. In terms of HERF has supported remote activity. What I can tell you in terms of on the revenue side of the house is that our SLN, our SUNY Learning Network fees have declined year over year, and we expect that decline will sustain or it will carry forward. And that's as students have come back face to face. So we do see a decline in SLN fees. At the same time, fitting into that is our lab fees are also down because we have fewer labs that we're offering face-to-face now than we were pre-COVID. So you've got two kind of negative pressures on revenue, SLN and SLN and lab fees. Offsetting that a bit, your tech fees are up a bit because we raised the rate. But again, to answer your question, the impact of online classes is fixed into that estimate for revenues.
All right, thanks. And if again, I called out that question to anybody, but if someone could answer that at some time, doesn't have to be today, I'd appreciate that. Thanks.
And I want to give you, go ahead, Kim.
Oh, no, go ahead and finish,
Okay.
Daryl.
I just wanted to back up for a second on the HERF funds and how we're managing those funds. We have a process. It's actually a portal where individuals will submit requests for possible support from HERF funds. Carolyn Hunt in our grants office scrutinizes that reporting, as does Mike Quinn, our controller, and they will provide a recommendation as to whether or not HERF funds are applicable. Should they meet a certain threshold, we take proposals to the cabinet, and the cabinet will then weigh the, whether or not we think it's appropriate, or do we want to table it as we consider other alternatives. That'll particularly be the case as we look at the remaining funds that are outstanding.
And I can add a few points as well, Trustee DeLoss. Parla, before I jump in, I saw your hand raised. Did you want to say anything, Paula Barlow?
Oh, no, I just forgot to lower my hand.
Thank you. So talking about online specifically, looking at across all of our modalities, we treat them all equal. And some of the things, both from the MCC perspective and the SUNY perspective, looking at student success, we're looking at persistence, retention, and completion, but we also look at pass-fail rate. So what is the grade that the students are receiving in that course? Historically, we've had challenges with online, but as we've partnered with SUNY and we've just increased our supports universally across all of our systems, I think thanks to COVID, that has really helped us to take a look at courses. We may start to see a change in the overall pass-fail rate of online in particular, but we do look at it holistically from the persistence, retention, and success metric. Also, just looking and thinking about student success, MCC is one of the leaders in guided pathways. And part of that is just making sure that our students are getting on the pathway, on the right pathway coming in the door, ensuring that they stay on that pathway, that they're learning while they're on that pathway, but also that they're getting out in the time allotted for their program. And so there's lots of things behind the scenes that we do to make sure that we're supporting students. Everything's always a work in progress, but I think we've seen some great strides by moving to a guided pathways model and supporting our students in that way. So hopefully that's a bit helpful as well.
No, it is. Thank you very much. I didn't expect anything other than good news in that regard. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Daryl? So with that, let's move now to the resolutions. First, resolved that the Board of Trustees of Monroe Community College accepts the interim financial reports as of November 30th and December 31st, 2021, which can be found in attachment 1. Trustees, may I have a motion to approve the financial reports as detailed in attachment 1?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Thank you. And a second. Thank you. Any other discussions? With that, I'll move to a roll call, starting first, all in favor. Trustee Paula Barlow,
Aye.
Trustee Dan DeLoss,
Aye.
Trustee Barbara Lovenheim,
Aye.
Trustee Carla Palumbo,
Aye.
Trustee Dale Rakoff, aye. Trustee Grace Tillinghast,
I think she's muted.
Grace,
She's muted. She's still on mute.
we'll come back, Grace. Trustee Connie Walker
Aye.
and Chair Alan Williams.
Aye.
And Grace, did you have an opportunity?
Yeah, I think yes, she's still on mute.
Jeremy, I'm not sure if you can unmute Grace for her.
Yes. Go ahead, Grace.
There you go.
Aye.
Thank you. No opposed. The resolution carries. We'll move on to the second, which is resolved that the Board of Trustees of Monroe Community College authorizes the purchases of items over $20,000 as listed for the months of November and December 2021, found in attachment 2. Trustees may have a motion to approve the purchases over $20,000 as detailed in attachment 2.
Aye.
So moved.
Oh, sorry.
Second.
And a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussions or questions? Let me move then to a roll call vote. First, all in favor, Trustee Paula Barlow,
Aye.
Trustee Dan DeLoss,
Aye.
Trustee Barbara Lovenheim,
Aye.
Trustee Carla Palumbo,
Aye.
Trustee Dale Rakoff, aye. Trustee Grace Tillinghast,
Aye.
Trustee Connie Walker,
Aye.
and Chair Alan Williams.
Aye.
There are no opposed. And next resolution pertains to the audit. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of Monroe Community College accepts the annual audit of Monroe Community College for the fiscal year ended August 31, 2021, is conducted by Bonadeo and Company, LLP. As you'll find in the handout, trustees may have a motion to approve the annual audit as detailed in the handout.
So moved.
And a
Second.
second?
Second.
Thank you. In terms of discussion, I wanted to convey our appreciation. Never take for granted an unmodified audit. It's a significant achievement, especially in a year with a lot of different government accounting changes that were a bit unprecedented, change in personnel, and Eileen for your work protecting the college when apparently it was difficult to keep a lot of things protected in terms of cybersecurity. So we're very grateful for that. Any other discussion, questions? All right, we will move to a roll call vote. All in favor, Trustee Paula Barlow,
Aye.
Trustee Dan DeLoss,
Aye.
Trustee Barbara Lovenheim,
Aye.
Trustee Carla Palumbo,
Aye.
Trustee Dale Rakoff, aye. Trustee Grace Tillinghast,
I think trustee Tilling has had to exit the meeting.
okay. Trustee Connie Walker
Aye.
and Chair Alan Williams.
Aye.
We have no opposed. Next, I will share the resolution, and then if you want to provide any background, Daryl, certainly will invite that. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of Monroe Community College authorizes the following transfer of funds from Career Technical Education Admin, Academic Support, Personal Services, General Institution in the amount of $71,954 to Vice President, Economic Development and Innovation Workforce Services, General Administrative, Personal Services, $71,954. Daryl, do you mind providing just
Sure.
up to this?
So this is simply a move of budget dollars from one function. In this case, academic support is the correct from bucket. It's a program director position that is moving over and being converted to a manager position. It's moving from the function academic support to general administrative. And it's simply a movement of budget. These resolutions come to the board if they're in excess of $20,000 and moving between two different functions.
Perfect. Thank you. Trustees may have a motion to approve the transfer of funds.
So moved.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion or questions? With that, I'll move to a roll call vote. All in favor, Trustee Paula Barlow,
Aye.
Trustee Dan DeLoss,
Aye.
Trustee Barbara Lovenheim,
Aye.
Trustee Carla Palumbo,
Aye.
Trustee Dale Rakoff, aye. Trustee Grace Tillinghast, Trustee Connie Walker,
Aye.
and Chair Alan Williams.
Aye.
And there are no opposed. And finally, I'd ask you to refer to the informational items in attachments 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And I didn't know, Daryl, if you wanted to provide any other comments regarding these items.
Couple of quick comments. You have in your reports the CIP, Capital Improvement Projects report. Just want to highlight and update you on the downtown campus garage. We expect that will continue in operation through this calendar year. As you might recall, we're moving to decommission that garage rather than renovate it, but we do believe it'll be operational without a problem for calendar year 22. And in 23, we would expect that we would close that down. We have regular inspections every 6 months, and if something were to occur during the calendar year, we would not hesitate to close it earlier if need be. And in addition, you have two policies for a first read. The data classification policy 7.2, which is a new policy. And this one's focused on data classification and establishing accountability for our data. Again, this is a new policy coming out of the work of CIO Eileen Worley and the security work she's doing. And then the second policy is information technology security policy. It's basically a full rewrite of a prior policy. CIO Worley is here if there were questions on those policies.
I don't have any questions on either of the policies, but I would, first of all, I really appreciated the fact that there was included apparently there is a comment period, and there was a report on what comments were received and what action was taken on any of those comments. That was very helpful. But it would have been easier for me, or it would be easier for me in the future with any policy that changes to sort of have almost like a red line version of a Word document, so that you could sort of do a quick comparison or just highlight the changes. As Daryl
Yeah.
said, one policy was completely, went from 2 pages to 10 or 12. So that's a good upgrade, but just something that'd be helpful in the future. Thanks.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think
and
if I could just jump in, just the data classification policy is brand new, so there would be no red line there, Dan. And then the information technology security policy was so rewritten that a red line would have just been like a crime scene, so.
Okay, good, fair enough.
Daryl, I have one question, and if you've answered it already, my apologies, but when the garage is decommissioned, what do we do? Do we fill it in, or
we
support?
basically fit, yeah. I mean, and again, that design work has yet to be done, but we will fill it in to the extent we're able to. I mean, remember, we do have some access into the building from there.
Mhm.
So they will have to, figure that out as they make the plans. But so more work to be done.
All right, thank you.
I have a question about the garage, and it's decommissioning for that particular purpose. Are there any ideas about future use for any other purpose?
We will engage that, but I don't believe that there may be some storage possibilities there. But again, I think most of the space in that garage will be eliminated and we'll have a surface lot instead.
Okay.
But we will keep as much space as possible, still maintaining the integrity of the structure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? So given that, I'll take my off ramp and let you know that this concludes the Finance and Facilities Committee report. Thank you again, Mike and Daryl and Eileen.
Welcome.
Thank you, Trustee Rakoff. Trustee Carla Palumbo will now give the Personnel and Programs Committee report. The board will consider these resolutions as committee of the whole, voting on each in turn. Trustee Palumbo.
Thank you, Chair Allen. The first is a resolution that I'll now read. Whereas the Board of Trustees of Monroe Community College appointed Deanna R. Burt Nana as the 6th president of Monroe Community College on November 19, 2020, and the trustees of the state of New York approved said appointment on December 29, 2020. And whereas the Board of Trustees of Monroe Community College authorized the chair to enter into a second amendment to the agreement with the president. Whereas the State of New York Joint Commission on Professional Ethics, JCOPE, issued advisory opinion number 21-02 on October 19, 2021, declining to extend Public Officers Law Section 74 to community colleges affiliated with the State University of New York. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Trustees approves amended paragraph 1.4, replace aid, spelled AIDE, with aid, spelled AID, and amended paragraphs 1.5 and 1.6 to update references to Public Officers Law Section 74 with General Municipal Law to align the language in the agreement with the president with JCOPE advisory opinion. Trustees, may I have a motion to approve the amendment to the president's agreement?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Does anyone have any questions?
Hey, Carla, if I might, I just wanted to point out, I think part of this may have arisen out of a conversation that I had with the president. And boy, I just have to say she acted on it really, really quickly. You know, there's a lot of things that filings that are required or ethical standards out there. And at least in my mind, there was a bit of a question. And a week or two later, boom, there was the answer from the state. So great work. And of course, I'm going to be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Dan. Trustee Deloss, sorry. Does anybody else have anything? If not, I'll call a roll call vote. All in favor, please say aye. Trustee Paula Barlow.
Aye.
Trustee Dan Deloss.
Aye.
Trustee Barbara Lovenheim.
Aye.
I say aye. Trustee Del Rykoff.
Aye.
I believe Grace Tillinghast is still off the call. Okay. Trustee Connie Walker.
Aye.
Chair Alan Williams.
Aye.
There's no opposition, no abstention. The motion carries. Next, resolved that the Board of Trustees of Monroe Community College approves the appointment of Quent Rhodes, Associate Vice President of Facilities, effective March 7th, 2022 through August 31st, 2022, at an annual salary of $115,000 prorated to $56,528 for the appointment period. Trustees, may I have a motion to approve the appointment of Quent Rhodes?
So moved.
There's a move. Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? Seeing none, I will now call a roll call vote. All in favor, please say aye. Trustee Paula Barlow.
Aye.
Trustee Dan Deloss.
Aye.
Trustee Barbara Lovenheim.
Aye.
I say aye. Trustee Del Rykoff.
Aye.
Trustee Connie Walker.
Aye.
Chair Alan Williams.
Aye.
There's no opposed and there's no abstentions. The motion carries. Are there any other questions to come before the committee? Seeing none, this concludes the Personnel and Programs Committee report.
Thank you, Trustee Palumbo.
Thank you.
Now I'll ask President Burt Nana to give her report.
Thank you so very much, Trustee Williams, and thank all of our trustees for just your continued commitment to the shared governance of this outstanding institution, and also to my colleagues at every level of the organization that commits daily to the types of positive reports that you're receiving on today. It takes a team. I also want to welcome officially Trustee Walker. We're so pleased to have you as part of this dynamic institution of higher education. So thank you for your service. A couple of updates that I'd like to provide, beginning with an overview of the safety of our institution. One of the top 5 strategic priorities that were set for the college at the beginning of my tenure on May 10th is around safely and compassionately returning to in-person work and learning. And in the words of Dr. Mike Mendoza of Monroe Community College, our Commissioner of Public Health, Monroe County, MCC maintains its position as the safest places in the county for students and employees. The college commenced its spring 2022 semester without any delays and welcoming 8,004 students overall. 5,032 students have an in-person presence and are required to participate in baseline COVID-19 testing prior to February 3rd, regardless of their vaccination status. MCC's 7-day rolling average on-campus COVID-19 positivity rate is around 0.90%, whereas the overall campus positivity rate is at 0.29%. And even since September 2020, MCC has administered nearly 37,000 pooled and rapid COVID-19 tests. We are strictly adhering to the mandates of Governor Hochul of Suny and Monroe County to implement safety measures. For example, masking is required indoors in college buildings. Baseline testing is required of our students and employees, and a required verification of vaccination and boosters for students who engage in person. Booster eligibility is based on when a student completes their initial vaccine series. MCC employees are complying with safety measures and voluntarily verifying their vaccination and boosters, and for that, we're very grateful. We've extended the support as well for employees through a telecommuting pilot program that provides employees with an opportunity to qualify for remotely working up to 5 days per pay period. And without question, MCC indeed is one of the safest places anyone can be in the county for work and for learning. Another update is around our strategic planning process. As you already know, a 5-year strategic plan is under development. The current strategic plan will expire this August. Earlier today, the Board of Trustees, with you all, thank you so very much, we engaged in an annual retreat and had the opportunity to interact with Collaborative Brain Trust, or CBT, to lay out a framework for the role of the board in the strategic planning process. CBT has been hired to extend the support of MCC's institutional research staff in designing a methodology for collecting input from various internal and external stakeholders, and ultimately working with our outstanding internal staff to distill all of that information with broad input into 3 to 5 strategic priorities that will chart the course for our work together over the next 5 years. Our strategic plan process is being co-chaired by 2 talented MCC colleagues, Valerie Avalon and Yasna Bagnavoska. They're bolstered their support by a broad and representative group of many MCC staff and faculty that make up our strategic planning leadership team. The plan will be presented to the board in June for its consideration as a first read and for official adoption in August, at your August meeting. Additionally, another topic is around what is happening in terms of Suny Community College budget priorities. The governor recently announced, in a follow-up to her State of the State address, certain priorities that have been set for Suny. And the Suny Community College presidents were very pleased that the governor's executive budget proposal includes support for community colleges in a variety of ways. And here's just a couple of examples. Most importantly, the budget explicitly calls out the need for 100% of the funding floor, which translates to no cut in operating funding year to year. That is a very good starting point for us as community colleges in Suny. And as we continue to advocate for the state to move our state operating aid funding model away from a per full-time equivalency or FTE model to a more predictable and potentially stable annual fund. Another point in the governor's proposal is funding for other community colleges, specific funding sources that were maintained, and an increase in funding for support to support child care centers, of which we do have that available for employees, staff, and for students as well at MCC. There's a proposal to reset the Excelsior tuition rates, a proposal for part-time TAP, tuition assistance program, including potential funding to support not only part-time students, but also students that were incarcerated individuals. Each of these actions require legislative action, And I am appealing to each of you as well to lean into the full weight of your individual and collective influence, all of us together as a united voice for MCC students and the economic vibrancy of our communities. Last but not least, the Forward Center at downtown campus. The college received temporary certificate of occupancy for a soft opening of the Finger Lakes Workforce Development Center, or to us, the Forward Center, this semester. Students are enrolled and engaging in learning a skilled trade at our downtown campus. A lot of extra effort from a cross-functional group of MCC staff, as well as Suny and Monroe County, have been very instrumental in making it possible to deliver on this 11.4 million, 50,000 square foot investment in our community, region, and state. Amazing MCC staff and committed stakeholders face many unusual barriers during the construction process. For example, a condensed construction timeline, a pandemic, major supply chain delays, and a shortage of trade workers, just to name a few. These are the true heroes and deserving of special recognition for their laser-like focus on positioning MCC at the forefront of workforce and economic development for Monroe County's post-pandemic recovery. I hope you will join me in thanking each one of them. This concludes my report, and I welcome any questions.
No questions? Okay. Well, thank you, Dr. Bertnana. I will now ask the cabinet members to give their report. The first of whom is Dr. Calvin Grant.
Thank you, Chair Williams, and good evening, everyone. I just have a couple of points that I wanted to make sure that I pointed out to everyone. Obviously, you have all of our summaries. The first is, I think at the last Board of Trustees meeting, I mentioned that we had applied for a grant through the AAC&U, and I'm happy to report that we did receive notification that we are recipients of that grant from the AAC&U for $10,000. We have just started to pull together the team that will be working through the toolkit that is going to be used for taking a look at diversity, equity, and inclusion throughout curriculum. And so more information on that will be forthcoming when we have more to share. The other thing I thought it was important to talk about is the fact that MCC had worked in partnership with Monroe County to try to provide some support to those that were relocated to our region from Afghanistan. And there was a movement to try to have housing potentially on campus for some of those families. And so we had worked a lot behind the scenes with Monroe County to try to provide that opportunity for those individuals. At the end, the county decided that they did not need to necessarily use our campus, but certainly we wanted you to be aware that we were fully prepared and ready to assist in providing housing and support to those Afghani relocators to our campus. And so I want to make sure that I take some time to thank Jenny Gearmentry, the Executive Director for the MCC Association, and Acting VP for Student and Academic Services, Kimberly McKenzie Mayberry, for the hard work that went into trying to make this a reality. So again, although it did not wind up happening in fruition, just to know again, our institution is ready and prepared to serve the county wherever possible. So we wanted to make sure that you were aware that that was taking place in the background as well. And so those are the highlights that I wanted to point out to you all this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? All right. Thank you, Dr. Gant. Darryl Jackamore, the interim CFO.
Yes, so you have the report before you. I want to focus in on the Technology Services, the Log4j vulnerability mitigation. Log4j is a part of Java programming language, and it's been one of the foundational ways that software has been written since the mid-1990s. It's basically in all of your applications, and this vulnerability allows for a potential hacker to get into your system. And if they do get in, then all of the other defenses that we've worked so hard to put in place are just no longer, they no longer work. And so we got word of this early in December, and CIO Eileen Worley, Assistant CIO Amy Ariola, and the whole team in Technology Services really went to focus on this. And spent many hours, weekends, overtime during December, installing patches for the various software applications, engaging Suny iTech to apply mitigation to the Banner ERP system. We were one of the first schools to do that. As a matter of fact, we learned a short time ago, there are still some schools that are just getting around to this. Well, we didn't want to wait. And the team just done an incredible job mitigating this risk. The risk is never over, but we've largely mitigated it at this point. So again, great job from Technology Services keeping our data and operations safe.
Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Daryl. Next is Dr. Kimberly McKenzie Mabry.
Hi, thank you, Trustee Williams, Chair Williams. Good evening, trustees. In my update today, I will highlight both academic services and student services. And I'm happy to share that the college has received approval from the New York State Department of Education to offer a new Associate of Science degree in Business Administration Accounting. This degree is a university parallel program that is fully equivalent to the first 2 years of a bachelor's degree and will prepare students who wish to major in accounting to transfer to a 4-year school with full junior status. This program was initially developed to support our Suny online partnership and will be available 100% online as well as face-to-face. And great efforts continue on the development of micro-credentials in academic services, which are intended to offer short, flexible opportunities for individuals to add a new work skill or start on an academic pathway, or to support students in attaining stackable credentials. Currently, we have micro-credentials in geospatial information and technology, earth sciences for teachers, multicultural diversity, HVAC essential workplace skills, and our newest one, which was recently approved, Holocaust, Genocide, and Human Rights Studies. And as you know, we continue to see and support the financial challenges our students face on a daily basis. Our college-wide student resource program continues to provide various supports, and in fall 2021 provided over $100,000 worth of support towards housing, childcare, transportation, and other necessities, as well as emergency support for books, supplies, and student technology. Since spring 2020, MCC has provided almost 900 laptops to MCC students. Some of the other highlights noted on the update support enrollment efforts, and while enrollment has been down overall, I would like to share some new news that new student registration and enrollment for this spring exceeded our spring 2021 numbers. Overall student registration is up 13%, and FTE enrollment of new students is up about 23% for matriculated students and almost 17% for non-matriculated students. As Daryl mentioned, enrollment numbers continue to shift as dual enrollment and other late registrations are added in, but we're hopeful that this is an uptick for us. A few of the factors that we believe have a positive impact on new student enrollment this spring include having a stronger on-campus presence with enrollment services and student activities and events. I think opening our campus in July to see and serve students face-to-face was very important, especially for those who needed that personal touch in order to get through the application and enrollment process. We are placing more students into college level courses using high school transcripts, which this means that fewer students are required to complete the AccuPlacer for course placement. And we're admitting more students directly to their program of choice instead of into program pathways. So we think those things have had an incredible impact on the changes that we're seeing. And a few areas that we've identified as opportunities that we will continue working on are welcoming our new marketing agencies of record. So this year we will have multiple agencies of record versus one agency of record. We may have a boutique agency, a large agency. This really gives us the flexibility to meet the varying and strategic needs of MCC. And the process truly will allow us to be much more nimble, much more flexible and cost effective in meeting our marketing and enrollment needs. We're currently assessing our integrated advising model and student registration processes. And work is currently underway to update our financial aid system, which will truly transform our functions and provide timely communications. And most importantly, the overall student experience will change, much more positive. The update will allow more timely and accurate disbursement, and many processes will be automated. This concludes the updates from both academic and student services. Thank you.
Hey, any questions?
Yes, Kim, I just wanted to ask you how, since we're moving from developmental courses into the co-courses, how is that going? Does that seem to be keeping people in college more? Does it seem to support them more? Could you just comment on that?
Sure, absolutely, Chair Lemmerham. So it's we're seeing it's different between English and math. So English has a co-requisite model. So in some cases, students might have a developmental course to help them through English 101 and be very supportive. Initial data does show positive results from that. So we're planning on increasing that and even more direct placement. In math, the group is just getting started taking a look at how we can place more students into college credit bearing math courses versus the Dev Ed. So we expect to see some information and data on that in the next semester. And overall, we're really excited about it and hope that what we're seeing, let me just say this, what we're seeing is students who are self-placing or based on transcripts, it's a pretty good job of getting students right into the college, right? So students are saying, yes, I'm ready for college level. And if they're saying that, then we're seeing some success with those students. Students who are saying, I'm not ready for college level in the self-placement, that's where we're seeing an opportunity to just really support students. Students may be ready, but they're saying no and still putting themselves in the developmental coursework. So while the data is still early on, we are seeing some initial positive results. Still a lot of work to do.
Good. Thank you very much.
Could I ask a question about how those students are faring as far, the ones who are taking the developmental education courses, how they are faring financially?
That's a really great question. I'd like to be able to provide through Dr. Burt and Anna some information on that following this meeting. We know historically students have been in that developmental education pathway for much longer than we would want them to, which absolutely has an impact on their financial standing long term, because we have seen some of the benefits of the work to date in shortening that time frame. The data may be a little bit different. So if you agree, I'd like to provide some accurate data at the next meeting or through Dr. Burt and Anna. I just don't know it.
I would appreciate that. That would be very helpful, because in making the change to that particular area, it's bound to have impact across a demographic of student who needs something, and what that is, I'm sure you're trying to figure out. But in any event, at least having a picture of what that looks like, a snapshot of what that looks like, will be helpful in assessing any sort of success at this point.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for allowing the time for me to get that. And I would do a disservice if I didn't correct myself. So math does have, trustee Lovenheim does have 2 co-requisites with math 150 and 160. So we are also looking at it from that perspective in math as well.
So it's follow-up question on that. So will the AccuPlacer, or is the AccuPlacer pretty much a thing of the past, or no?
I think it's safe to say that it's moving towards that, but there will always be a small population of students that may need to take AccuPlacer for a variety of reasons. Students who have been out of the classroom for a significant amount of time. Some of our courses do require more recent high school transcripts or college coursework. Students who are coming from international, from international countries. So we may still see a small percentage of students needing the AccuPlacer, but my guess is over time that will continue to get smaller and smaller.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Dr. McKenzie Mabry. Next will be Ms. Kristen Sine-Cruz, the AVP of Economic Workforce Development.
Thank you, Chair Williams. Good evening, everybody. I will be brief. I just want to point out on the highlight sheet for Economic and Workforce Development that on January 18th, the CMETA board approved an award of $200,000 in support of our Empower Healthcare program. That program, we're very grateful for the partnership that we've had with Monroe County and the CMETA organization in building this amazing workforce development program. This most recent award will cover the cost of tuition for participants in our CNA program, which continues to be very, very successful. Our completion rate is 95%. Our pass rate is 94%, and our employment rate is 96%. Thank you. Any questions?
I do. When will is the center completed at the downtown campus?
We have, it's partially completed. We have, as Dr. Bertnana mentioned earlier, we have our temporary certificate of occupancy that we received. We have our skilled trades classes happening on the 5th floor, but due to the supply chain delays, we're still waiting for some furniture and some things to be completely set up. So we're looking probably at the May timeframe for an official launch.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? This is Trustee Walker. I ask a question about the CNA. Is that the entry level for a health care position?
Yes, for a clinical position. So one of the things that we're very proud of with regards to that program is that we did not offer that program without an agreement with employers. We have about 14 employer partners that we would be able to create a pathway for these participants because that particular role does have a high turnover rate. So we have created a pathway from CNA to LPN to RN. And we're just starting work on really officially kicking that off with some support from an award from FLIPS, which is a local federal organization. I have Finger Lakes Performing Providers. Thank you, Gretchen. I see you nodding. So yes, so it's been very successful, and we feel as though we're doing very responsibly in that we are providing these participants with a ladder.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you. Next will be Vice President Gretchen Wood.
Thank you, Chair Williams. Today, I'm just going to add a little bit more detail to what's happening with our strategic planning process. You met today with our partners in the process, the Collaborative Brain Trust. And as President Bertnana shared, they're working with our internal 16-member strategic planning leadership team, led by Jasna Bogdanovska and Valerie Avalone. So we're very grateful to them for their service. We're currently in phase 1, the discovery phase, which will go through March. It includes data collection, analysis, and synthesis. In February, which starts tomorrow, the strategic planning leadership team and CBT are facilitating approximately 50 listening sessions with a full range of stakeholders, including faculty, staff, students, our external stakeholders, including educational partners. There's going to be open forums at both the downtown campus and the Brighton campus. This is an intentionally inclusive process to ensure all voices are heard as we complete this discovery phase of the planning process. Transparency is also a priority. We also will be keeping our website up to date on where we are with the strategic planning process. Again, the goal is to ultimately identify 3 to 5 goals that will be the framework for our 5-year plan. So I want to thank everyone who's facilitating this very important process. Does anyone have any questions? Because Chair Williams, I'm also going to be presenting the foundation report on behalf of Foundation Board Chair Laurie Van Duzen.
Yes. Okay. Any questions before VP Wood puts on her other hat?
I know I can change my background here. Ready?
Yes.
There we go. So thank you so much for the opportunity to present on behalf of the good work of the foundation directors. You know that they are a remarkable group. I think we need to move ahead a couple of slides. Well, not that fast. So let's, just go to, I think, just my name. But anyway, so I'm pleased to share that this month, the foundation made a transfer of scholarship and program funds to the college in the amount of $1.75 million. This is an increase of 13% over last year's scholarship transfer amount. So we're so grateful to the work of our foundation board and also obviously to our very generous donors who make this possible. And you can see that we are working on an in-person gala. So speaking of generous donors, the Gold Star Gala presented by M&T Bank is scheduled for Saturday, April 30th. Our friends at DS and Company have once again come up with a remarkable theme, alchemy. Progressing through extraordinary circumstances is an experiment in creative chemistry. We're optimistically preparing for an in-person experience, but obviously we're going to change our plans if that is needed. You can look forward to receiving more information about this. This is the largest fundraising event for the foundation each year, and we're looking forward to connecting again with the community, and we're so grateful to a vibrant committee that's making this possible. Next slide, please. We're also looking forward to when we get to see grass again and the scholarship open. It's scheduled for Monday, June 27th at the Country Club of Rochester. We have 2 great co-chairs, Gavin Brownlee and Chris Simony. And so please let me know if you're interested in more information about this. Of course, if you're interested in golfing. Next slide, please. I will share with you that we were very, very grateful to receive a grant of $469,000 from the Greater Rochester Health Foundation to secure funding for our 2022 Be a Healthy Hero summer camp. This is held on the Brighton campus. It's a 5-week multifaceted summer program for Rochester City School District students, providing physical activity, improving nutrition, addressing social and emotional health, and delivering developmentally appropriate reading and math instruction. We expect to have between 500 and 750 campers on campus this summer, and we look forward to them eventually becoming MCC students. So we're grateful to the Greater Rochester Health Foundation. They've been supporting this camp since 2014. We do have other funders that support that camp, and we're going to be doing some active fundraising around funding the camp for 2023. So as always, it's a pleasure to share the updates of the work of the foundation board. I invite you to take a look in your packets. There is an activity report so you can see some more detail of things that are happening. And thank you for all that you do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vice President Wood. Any questions? Hearing none, I will now ask Trustee Barlow to give her report.
Thank you, Chair Williams. So I helped the Student Government Association in October 2021 to hand out pumpkin cider and hot chocolate and donuts at the Brighton campus. Also during the month of November, I helped hand out turkey dinners to students at the downtown campus. For Phi Theta Kappa, I helped with their PTK Founders Day event, which took place November 17th, 2021. We also collaborated with the Global Union on this event as it fell during International Education Week. This allowed me to keep up with our president, Dr. Nana's priority for diversity and inclusion. I attended the New York Community College Trustees Annual Conference in Saratoga Springs on November 4th through the 6th. This conference was extraordinarily rich in information and allowed me to be more engaged as a student trustee. I also had the privilege of accepting an award for Trustee Carla Palumbo. Last semester, I started holding office hours for students to stop by my office and discuss or share their success stories and give them an opportunity to meet as their student trustee. I advertise these hours with a flyer that is posted in the Office of Student Life and Leadership. I had an opportunity to use those office hours to engage in conversation with a student who had previously attended MCC, and she was looking for help re-registering for classes as she had student account holds. I'm in the process of helping her get her account resolved so she can return to MCC. I have also received a concern from a student about a strange smell in the bathrooms. The student claims that this has been going on since September. For an update on the student that I spoke with in my office, she is currently now registered for spring classes and is back at MCC. In keeping up with one of my priorities as student trustee, I have emailed Douglas Henberg, Health and Physical Education Department, to allow me to visit their chair meetings for 5 minutes to explain who I am and the best way to reach the students from other campuses. It is my hope in having this meeting, I can set up a visit to each campus this semester. And throughout the month of January of 2022, I attended multiple SGA meetings and PTK meetings to continue my role as a student leader. I have also taken the opportunities to sign up for the Reimagined Lead Certificate Program to continue to hone my leadership skills. My leadership in PTK allowed me to head PTK's college project, which allowed me to collaborate with the English speakers of another language and transitional studies departments to help bridge the gap of digital learning for a population of underrepresented students and help give back critical time to the professors as they were spending a substantial amount of time helping the students with technology. I'm happy to report that the project was a success and is continuing for the spring semester. In the summer of 2021, PTK as a whole decided that they would submit to PTK headquarters that we would submit for our chapter Phi Theta Iota to become 5-star chapter. To do that, we needed to submit our college project and our honors and action project essays. It was a lot of hard work and dedication to all members involved, and all hallmarks were submitted to headquarters. Hope to have an update on both projects by the next Board of Trustees meeting. I'm currently registered for the Association of Community College Trustees Legislative Summit, which is held in Washington, D.C. from February 5th through February 9th, 2022. I look forward to being a part of shared governance and learning more about the legislative process for higher education. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Trustee Barlow? Thank you, Trustee Barlow. At this time, we will begin the shared governance portion of the meeting.
Okay, each of the shared governance leaders will have an opportunity to provide an update of no more than 5 minutes to the Board of Trustees. Speakers will not be able to share their allotted time with others. Student Government Association.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Isabella and I'm the president of the Student Government Association. I'm really glad I got to be here today. My practice was canceled, so I'm finally here to give a report. This semester, the SGA has worked hard to recruit new members. Last week, we had interviewed and accepted 2 students into the organization. We also have applicants who will be interviewed in the upcoming weeks. The SGA looks forward to hosting our Valentine's Day party event, which will take place on February 14th from 12 to 2 p.m. in the atrium. There will be music, chocolate, flowers, and card making for MCC students. The SGA is currently planning our Spring Festival, which will take place in May. And we will be hosting an ice cream social event so students can learn more about the Student Government Association and their student leaders. And we hope to recruit more students through this event. And this upcoming month, we will be starting a mask campaign on campus. The slogans, "Keep MCC COVID-free" and "Wear a mask, stay in class" will be printed on posters around the school. We will be handing out fun masks and other COVID-related items to students and encourage participation through our social media accounts. The SGA is also working on a survey for all students. We hope to gain a better understanding of what they'd like to see from their student government. And lastly, the SGA continues to meet weekly and support the students and clubs at MCC. And that's all I have. So thank you so much.
Okay, Faculty Senate.
Good evening, everyone. As we begin the new semester, I'm once again so grateful and appreciative of the time and dedication that faculty and professional staff commit to when serving our students. It takes skillful planning and thoughtful reflection to help students register, prepare course syllabi and information, structure the courses, and attend to the various needs of our students. And each semester, we welcome them back to the classroom with optimism and a fresh start. We continue to work with administration to keep processes transparent, working as efficiently and strategically as possible. An excellent example would be the policy portal. And I met with VP Wood and Dolores Pastos-Yobro on how to best incorporate shared feedback on college-wide policies. And as I mentioned at the Faculty Senate meeting, if an academic policy goes through Senate first, we will follow committee procedure, and then the policy will be posted in the portal for additional feedback. If the policy is not official Senate business, then the policy will be placed in the portal for college-wide feedback. And as a courtesy, I will remind folks to go and review. So thank you for the opportunity to work together and reach an agreeable process. In other news, in addition to monthly communication with the President's Cabinet, I will meet regularly with both President Bertnana and Dr. Mackenzie Mabry. I'm looking forward to productive and enlightening meetings. In regards to placement, we would like to discuss the provisional placement policy established when we first went remote in March 2020. If there's data that can show that multiple measures placements is working, then the Senate would like an opportunity to review it and discuss its efficacy. Professional Development Week will be June 6th through the 10th. And as of now, we plan to allow presenters to decide if their sessions will be in person or remote. Scott continues to work with administration on 5 different searches and is working on a small reorganization in environmental health and safety. That office will report to the AVP of facilities. And we continue to work with HR on the hiring manual. The next steps include feedback on the proposed draft and conversations surrounding the role of SCA in hiring. The Chair of Planning continues to work on the new strategic plan, as many of you have mentioned, with the steering committee and the consulting group, and we look forward to the next phase of that project. That's all I have, so thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Support Staff Planning Council.
Thank you. I'm Diane Wilson. I am new to the Support Staff Planning Council in a co-chair position. I'm here to report that we have 6 new members as of August of 2021, making that a total of 18 members. This past December, the SSPC coordinated with Dwight and collected over 10 boxes of food items from Brighton and downtown campus faculty and staff. We did not have a holiday event this past December due to social distancing limitations. We are contemplating a spring event if it's permissible. Discussions are ongoing regarding professional development events and brown bag workshops for support staff. We wanted to give kudos to Chuck DeSalvo and Lori Scipione from Public Safety for transporting 50 students from the downtown campus to the Brighton campus so that they can comply with the baseline testing requirement. Our next meeting is scheduled on March 8th, and we invite all support staff to join. That concludes my report. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Administration?
Thank you very much. You already see the excellence on display of my colleagues in shared governance. They join us, board members, in helping us to understand where the needs are around the college. So grateful for each one of you. And I just continue to be amazed by each and every one of these groups. They remain actively involved in helping us to plan our strategic planning and advancing searches. And even our Student Government Association has remained very focused on the 5 strategic priorities that were set at the beginning of the academic year for the work of the college, and have aligned their work, including making sure that there is a student voice, not only in our strategic planning processes, but in overall shared governance. So I will conclude very briefly, just with special thanks also to our union presidents, our Student Government Support Staff Planning Council, Faculty Senate, each one of you for how you support the work of the college and come alongside me and the other officers of the college. So thank each and every one of you. May I address any questions?
So now we'll do the union updates. Each of the union leaders will have an opportunity to provide an update of no more than 5 minutes to the Board of Trustees. Speakers will not be able to share their allotted time with others. I am going to report that we do not have any union updates for this meeting.
Okay, thank you, Linda. I would now like to call your attention to the biographies of our newest employees that can be found in attachment 9 and the staff recognition notes found in attachment 10. Both document the impressive credentials and accomplishments of MCC's employee. I know you would join me in recognizing them for their contributions to the college. Else? Resolved that the Board of Trustees, Monroe Community College, conduct an executive session pursuant to Public Officers Law 105, subsection F, the medical, financial, credit, or employment history of a particular person or corporation, or matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation. Trustees, may I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? A roll call vote. Trustee Barlow?
Aye.
Trustee DeLoss?
Aye.
Trustee Lobenheim?
Aye.
Trustee Palumbo?
Aye.
Trustee Rakoff?
Aye.
Trustee Walker? And Alan Williams, aye. Hearing no opposition, we will now move into executive session.
Hi.
Okay. Okay.
Chairman,
Trustee-
do you have the stream going again?
Yeah, it's recorded.
Okay. So trustees, this concludes the Board of Trustees meeting. Thank you all. It's been a long day, but it has been worth it. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank
Thank you,
you.
everyone.
Bye, everybody. Thank
night,
you.
everyone.
For a very
Thank
good
you.
chair.
Have a good night.
Good work. Good work.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Connie. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.